this thing on?
We talking about practice, man.
I work with my hands. It's a misdemeanor in 27 states.
You gotta be comfortable with your co-host in this amount of space.
Yeah, I can see me and you.
This guy runs a state.
You get that through your head?
You just got hashtag content.
You know, technology and stuff.
Open your grill. It's stuck in your teeth.
Now I have to mark them so I don't get the lick mic.
You're not really that stupid, are you?
Quavos.
I'm just here so I won't get fined.
We don't have a lot of editing this time.
The ceiling is the roof. Let's make it happen.
Ba 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 ba.
What does the NFL and this human beatbox have in common? We're breaking down the NFL draft starting with the Bills and the one and only Toby Motyka.
Niemeyer, for the second part of our 2017 NFL Draft Guest Triangle, we're going to talk words with Reese's Senior Bowl scouting coordinator Patrick Wu. And last but not least, from the fan perspective, lend your ears to hashtag Bills Mafia co-founder Del Reid.
To be determined. Episode 8, previously recorded from the studio in Mom's basement. We are located in upstate New York for those tuning in around the country and even around the globe.
That's just the facts.
Manny, we picked up yet another download, another listener, this time just outside of London.
Foggy London town.
I don't want to say we're international and we're big time internationally, but we're a few downloads away from that, maybe.
Hey, we're just trying to get the bants.
Trying to have the bants with the people in London.
I like it.
We'll get there. We'll get there. I'm determined to be.
I mean, you're a cheeky kid. A lot of people like that.
Celebrity.
That's an endearing quality.
We're looking to be at least a D-list celebrity in the greater England area.
It's a very specific goal. It's a very specific goal.
It'll never happen here because everyone's a YouTube star in America. So I just figured, hey, reach for a different country. Reach for a different country. All right, Maddie, episode 8, all about the NFL draft is this upcoming week. We get the draft.
What a time. What a time.
It is an exciting time of the year.
I do like it.
This year they've moved it to Philly, so we'll dive right in with this because we're going to make this segment quick. We've got 3 spectacular guests lined up, as you heard in the intro. And Maddie, may I commend you for the beatbox effort there. I tried a little mix on the fly here. You mixed yourself. I mean,
yeah,
that was very impressive.
I put down the volume on myself.
You put down the. I didn't even have to do it. I had the hand on the trigger ready to go, but
we just don't have the rights to the song.
That's true. That's true. The beatbox, though, we do.
Yeah. Those are these lips.
One Scooty Mink's able to do it.
Those are these lips.
Teeth
in the tongue.
What's planned for today, as I said, all about the NFL draft. Toby Motyka, 13 WHAM Sports in Rochester on a talk team perspective. So we'll get the Bills perspective from him. Patrick Wu, the scouting coordinator. I was trying to combine those words. That's not a thing. The scouting coordinator for the Senior Bowl, Reese's Senior Bowl, going to fill us in on the players' side. And then we figured, hey, we got to get the third component to this triangle, the third leg of the tripod, if you will.
Hey, our triangle offense. Phil, eat your heart out. That's not it.
Philly, eat your heart out.
But no, is that the term? Eat your heart out? I think it is.
Yeah.
That's it. When you really think, that's terrifying.
You had
it's a terrifying line. That's a well-known term too.
Don't second guess yourself. You had it all the way. All right, Del Reid, the founder of 26 Shirts and the co-founder of Buffalo Fan Base, the Bills Mafia,
FAM,
better known as the Bills Mafia, going to join us to give us kind of the fan perspective. He is only one fan, but he'll sort of dive into what he's heard and what that fan base is talking about. So
that's what's up.
The word, obviously, the draft, and Maddie, as I was getting into, I got a little ahead of myself. For the first time, it's outdoors. They're going to do an NFL draft outside in Philadelphia in prime time.
That puts a lot up to the skies. That's a lot up to chance. It's a lot up to chance.
That is a lot up to chance.
The Rocky Steps.
Completely different to hold it outside than to hold it on the Rocky Steps.
That's a lot of steps. I think they're even talking that when they get drafted, they're going up all of them
to the top.
Especially those first couple days are long enough. I don't know. That's going to be quite the coverage time.
If you're a media person covering the draft, you better hope that your team either, if you're later on, your team moves up, or if your team's early on, that they stay put.
Yeah.
Just so you can get your draft pick on the 11
Trading
o'clock
down.
show.
Woofda.
It starts at 8 o'clock on Friday. And then it spreads out for 3 days because the NFL has to own everything. So
Yeah.
why not own, instead of 1 day, let's own 3.
Especially that third day. Starts at noon.
Starts at noon, 4 to
It's
7.
going to be daylight. That's definitely going to be an interesting look.
And for the most part, nobody is paying attention. Nobody cares at that time. If you really care, you're gonna check it out on Twitter. You're gonna check it out maybe on local TV or your local newspaper or whatever, radio station, whatever it might be, or your favorite podcast on iTunes and Google Play.
Yeah.
You're really endearing to the people.
There they go.
Very endearing to the people.
Come
Matty.
back. Come back now.
Do you like that it's outside? Do you like that it's... I like that they changed locations. I think that's great. I don't know how it's going to work outside. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some aspects of it that could really, really work out. And it's not even really if they execute it well, because a lot of that stuff, because it's outside, it's not really up to them. I just hope it doesn't rain on them. Hope it's not too hot, because everyone involved is going to be suited up or dressed up.
Dressed to the nines.
Yeah, so that's going to be... I know Toby, who we're going to have on, he's going. He's going to be suited up.
Tell him not to dress to the nines.
It's going to be a little sweaty.
Get a little speed stick going.
A little speed stick. Hey, I hear Lady Speed Stick
Not
is
a sponsor, but...
Ladies, I don't know if Lady Speed Stick ever going to become a sponsor.
Well, if they do, we're more than willing to
That's very true.
partner up.
Lady Speed Stick.
Don't rule them out, Maddie. Do not rule them out.
Sparkle, sparkle.
All right, the Buffalo Bills, the team that we focus on for selfish reasons, but mainly because, well, hey, a majority of our downloads are in New York, so
Yeah.
we
It's
go
up
where the
here.
people are. We go where the people are. They've got the pick at 10. What do you do at 10, Maddie?
Well, I think especially with Sammy Watkins being a question mark now, when it comes away from the draft stuff and his contract and that fifth-year option, I think because of that, because it's very notable in the fact that and a lot of it's because of injuries, hasn't really panned out since he's become a Buffalo Bill, they might be going one of those big time. I think it's a pretty good draft for wide receivers, so I'm not sure if they really need to go wide receiver, but that's my head talking, my heart, or...
That would be your heart.
You're right. That is my heart.
Reverse that. It's the head that you're now going to refer to.
Eat your heart out. See, it's
It
still
confused you.
It's still back in my head.
You're flabbergasted by it.
Yeah. So, but head though, what I think is actually going to happen is wide receiver. Granted, I don't think that's where they should go, but that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, so that's interesting. I wouldn't be opposed to a wide receiver. One, even if Sammy Watkins works out, now you've got 2 dynamic wide receivers, which we know in the NFL you need.
Yeah.
You need 2 guys.
Like that compliment.
It's a passing league. You need to have multiple threats. And I know this team wants to be a running team with Shady, and that's fine. You can still run the ball, but at some point you have to have that vertical threat. And as you mentioned, if Sammy's going to be hurt, well, you got to have a guy that's available.
Absolutely.
You got to have a guy that's on the field. So I'm not opposed to that. I think this draft class is good at the top. I think it's a mystery as you get into the middle of it, and where there probably could be some value if you've done your homework, and if you would hope that the teams have by now, that you might be able to find some value in the later rounds. Colby Listenby, a guy with a ton of speed last year, didn't see the field. So we're going to see him for the first time in training camp, really, and as you get going into these OTAs and whatnot, to see if he's that guy that can be the number 2 on this team.
Well, and that's a roster more so that you really, it's not redshirt isn't a term when it comes to the pros, but this is a guy that's going to be coming in as a rookie for all intents and purposes.
And we saw him at Fisher last year, always off to the side, always doing stuff. So he was there. He's been through, he's seen training camp. He hasn't been through training camp is what I should say. I think the Bills go DB. I think they go corner in particular.
That's where the need is. Absolutely.
Exactly, because that's what the need is. And if you're a smart coach and a smart GM, you look at your roster and say, we're not at the point where we can go best available talent.
Exactly.
We're not at that point. The Bills have to start building that, as they've had to for 17 years.
Bills ding that.
Of missing the draft, or missing the postseason, rather. Now's your opportunity to get need, fill that need, because there's a bunch. I mean, listen, you're strapped from cap space. You have to be smart in this draft. This is where Doug Whaley is going to earn that paycheck, is in this draft.
And I'm surprised, especially with it being such a tenuous situation there, that they're letting him go through something as big in his calendar year of duties as the draft. So that's a lot on his shoulders.
Well, I mean, listen, that's what he's built on. He was a scout before. I mean, this is what he did. So you got to rely on him.
Yeah.
You got to rely on him. All right, Matty, this is the question I wrote down. We'll breeze through real quick. We're tight on time. We want to get to the murderer's row.
Tiempo.
Time.
Time.
Oh, time in Spanish, right.
Mm-hmm.
I forget you're bilingual. we do want to get to our murderer's row of guest
triangle.
lists. The triangle of guest lists. So who's the most intriguing player in this draft to you?
And it's only because we're talking about wide receivers and the fact that the local team around here, that's what local means around here, is wide receiver. I got to go with Cooper Kupp. If I'm going to say it not as quickly.
Yeah, don't go quick there.
Cooper Kupp is a
you
guy that one of our FOTs that we'll be talking to later in the show, and Patrick Wu, got to see. Eastern Washington, a more diminutive, what you've seen, especially with the Patriots, being their style, more diminutive kind of wide receiver.
Yeah.
You like to see the small school guys do well. I think he has that possibility. He was very good in Senior Bowl week, so we'll see. I think he's very, very interesting prospect.
I think there are some very interesting positions in this draft. Running back maybe being the first and foremost, just the question marks about where these running backs go. A lot of big-name guys.
Notable at the very least, if not
a lot of notable guys.
Big future.
Defensive back, safety, cornerback, obviously is very deep in this draft. It's been talked about numerous times. You're not going to learn anything new from me about that. But I think that's interesting that, you're talking about 3 guys that could potentially go in the first 5 picks.
In that so
in that DB class.
It's so interesting that position might have their draft.
Right.
Their poster child draft.
I think the most intriguing position is quarterback. Simply because there are a lot of teams that need it. There's a lot of teams with question marks.
Yeah, it's too bad.
The quarterback position, and as we all know, again, nothing new, but it's the most important position in football. So what do the Browns do? You got Brock Osweiler there. He could be trade bait, but really, I mean, he's been dealt, for a bag of bolts. So what do you get back for him? Nothing, really. I think Mitch Trubisky is maybe the most intriguing player of this draft because he's a guy that has been rumored to go first or fall out of the top 10. And that to me is interesting. I think there's some teams inside the top 10 that could certainly use a quarterback and maybe look at him. I mean, listen, maybe he goes third to the Bears.
Yeah, I'm looking in terms
I don't know.
of quarterbacks.
It's very interesting, and I think he's a guy that's the most intriguing because it was such like a flash in the pan. He had the one good year, and it catches everyone's eye. But can he do it for the long haul? When you get to pro sports, everyone's got talent. It's about consistency. That's the difference. That's what makes Peyton Manning great. That's what makes Tom Brady great. They do it on a consistent basis. They're not good in just weeks 1 through 4. They're good weeks 1 through 17.
Yeah, in terms of quarterbacks, Nathan Peterman, I want to see if he becomes the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger. It's a guy right there at Pitt, and he's unfortunately going to see a label as a game manager because one of the best this last season across the nation in QB rating, but not very flashy. But
interesting pick. Later round pick, from what I understand, right? Is that
he could be a little day 2, but he's not going to be in that top 3 or 4, I don't think.
Right.
So we'll see. That's a big role. It's a big role. And Roethlisberger's getting up there in years and definitely in health. So
yeah, and he's already...
in injuries, I should say.
Yeah, no. And he's already trying to decide whether to come back year to year. So, all right, we're going to get out of here. Jump right into the interviews next. Toby Motyka, 13 WHAM Sports in Rochester, around this bump music. That's coming up next on TBD.
NFL Draft 2017 will be showered over us. Before we know it, we'll be talking a little bit about it here on To Be Determined.
At Sports Spy Bond with at Travs Matt. Pleased to be joined by our second recurring guest, at Toby Motyka of 13 WHAM Sports. Officially Toby Motyka, not by birth, at Toby Motyka. Although that would be interesting. I wonder if that's the wave of the future. You could have started that, Toby. You have 3 children.
Toby Wolofsky would be by birth. No one would ever.
Yes. I love recalling Mitwafi.
That's true. I forgot about that, too.
I already butchered it, but...
I'm just glad you attempted it because I definitely would have butchered it.
It's just my listening skills, I think, because he just said it. So...
that last name, it's something else.
But hey, I got it into my veins. I got this Polish pronunciation skills, hopefully.
That's
in my
true.
veins.
That's true. You're what, half Polish? Quarter Polish?
I'm
half. Okay, all right.
half Polish.
Math always confused me. All right, Toby Motyka, sports anchor reporter extraordinaire, 13 WHAM Sports in Rochester, New York. For those who enjoy Toby's stuff in Rochester and those around the country who don't know Toby, that's the official title. As Maddie mentioned, this show all about the draft, and so this portion of the show going to be about a team in particular, the Buffalo Bills. Toby's going to talk from the perspective of the team because Toby's there, week in and week out covering these guys. So he's got the insight. He's got the knowledge that we're seeking. Toby, the Bills have plenty of needs. Where do they go in round one, currently holding the 10th pick?
I think they want to go with an elite player in the secondary. I think that is desperately what they're hoping for. But here's the thing. At the 10th pick, with the way this draft is shaping up, the absolute elite guys may not be there. I'm talking about like a select few. Think Malik Hooker or Marshawn Lattimore from Ohio State. Think Jamal Adams from LSU. After that, I think you fall into a little bit more of a gray area, and all three of those guys could be top 5 picks. That's the way this draft might shake out. If one of those guys fall to the Bills, I think they should run to the podium and make their selection.
Oh my gosh!
If not, I think they'll try to trade back. Yeah. If not, I think they try to trade back and get another guy like that maybe down later. Maybe a Jabril Peppers would be a nice fit in Sean McDermott's scheme. But if they end up standing pat at 10, I sincerely believe they're probably going with a wide receiver for the opposite reason that you look at with the corners. Corner, you can get good ones in the 2nd, 3rd, and even 4th, 5th round this year. Mm-hmm. It's deep. Wide receiver, not so much. Outside of the top 2, Mike Williams, Corey Davis, you're kind of dealing with a bunch of question marks. So, and keep one thing in mind. McDermott said he thinks the number 2 receiver is on the roster. What about the number 1? We'll talk about that a little later with Sammy Watkins. But if you're looking for a game changer, one of those 2 guys could be it at the 10th pick.
And I like you talking about how DBs in general, safeties and cornerbacks, it's so big in this draft because I think in the top 5 picks, all 3 of those names are bye-bye.
That would be so interesting, too. If those 3 of those guys go in the top 5, that's crazy.
It's a good change. It would make it interesting. It would make it unique. Yeah. All right, so those Bills really don't...
Adams is probably the most likely to fall. I think he's out of those guys the most likely because Ohio State actually might have 3 secondary players go in the top 10. So, but out of all the guys who could fall down, it's the LSU kid, and I think that would be a good fit.
The Nittany Lion and Maddie just passed out.
Hey, not a lot of rivalry here. I love the entire Big Ten in all sports. All right, so those Bills, they really don't have much in the way of draft picks or cap space and plenty of holes to fill. First off, can they fill their needs on draft day?
This is why I think they try to trade down. I think they might try to trade down twice. Late into the 1st round, get a couple more picks, then even out of round 3 and back down into round 4 and get another 4th and 5th rounder out of it. I think they're really going to be active in trying to add draft picks as much as they are specific players here. But to do that, you have to find takers. You have to find teams willing to go there. The 10th pick is a likely spot. Quarterback needy teams maybe looking to get in there. It does get a little easier as the draft goes on because the cost isn't nearly as high, but it's going to be hard to fill all those needs and just all those roster spots. I think the Bills are going to have a field day with undrafted free agents more than possibly any other team in the NFL.
That's interesting. Let's piggyback on the draft stuff here, and we've seen Terry Pegula's I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this.
Now remember, I'm a Penn Stater. We just talked about this.
He's trigger happy when it comes to firing people. He just, he's got deep pockets.
Yeah.
We know that. And he's not afraid to pull the trigger when it comes to letting people go if he doesn't like the direction that he thinks his team or teams are headed in. He just did it with the Sabres by letting GM TM go, who I loved me some Tim Murray.
That's a big name.
He let Disco Dan go. We fired Rex. We brought in Sean McDermott. Doug Whaley, maybe the surprise out of this whole thing has lasted. My question is, if the needs aren't addressed and we don't fill the holes and this draft doesn't go the way that Terry likes it, and who knows what he thinks of this, is this the last draft for Doug Whaley?
I think it should have been the last one last year, to be honest. I think the Pegulas finally got it right when they let go of the head coach and GM with Sabres. Keep one thing in mind with them. They have a penchant for firing coaches. Whoever takes the reins of the Sabres is going to be the 9th coach between 2 teams in 6 years for Terry and Kim Pegula. But the GM will be just the 4th. You had Darcy, who stuck around for probably longer than he should have. Tim Murray gets let go after just a few years, and Doug Whaley's been the only guy in Buffalo. So they have had more patience at that position. Mm-hmm. And I think they got it wrong with Whaley and got it right with the Sabres. Just let the new GM pick the new coach. That obviously isn't going to happen here. And I think they're going to be hesitant to fire Doug Whaley so soon, simply because people will be like, well, why didn't you just do it and let the new GM pick the new head coach? Now you have two guys on a different page again. So I think they're going to be patient here. And keep in mind one thing with Doug Whaley's last draft class, when you have Shaq Lawson, Reggie Ragland, Colby Listenby, that's an incomplete grade. All three of those players could and should be big players for the Buffalo Bills this year. So that draft could still end up a smashing success, even though it didn't do squat last year because of the injuries. So hold off on Whaley simply because the Pagulas, if they were going to fire him, he's done 10 fireable things in the last 6 months. So I think that they're going to be patient with him at least through next season, unless it goes really, really badly. And then you're going to have to find a scapegoat, and he'll be it. And
I think it's interesting you bring up the fact that 3 of those draft picks, did they have 7 last year? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if they had 7 draft picks last year.
Kevon Seymour was their last pick. I think it was in the 6th round.
Okay. 3 of their draft picks, either way, as you said, 3 of those draft picks didn't really see the field, 2 of which didn't see any playing time, and we just saw flashes of Shaq Lawson. So I think that's a very good point you bring up.
So the Bills...
And don't forget about Cardale Jones. He didn't see it until the second half of the last game of the year. So really, it's 4 picks. Didn't really have an impact for them a year ago.
So the Bills, they changed up a pre-draft tradition this year. They elected to send the head coach out, Sean McDermott, out to the mic to talk draft as opposed to the GM and Doug Whaley. Aside from him repeating that same scripted line, did we gain any insight from him talking this week about the draft?
Not really. The Bills are kind of rolling with that one-voice philosophy, to be honest with you, and I understand why. Every time someone else spoke last season or the last 2 years with Rex Ryan, they contradicted each other. It was, even with injury reports, you would hear Scott Birchtold, who was the director of communications, come out, and Rex Ryan would say, Marquise Goodwin's going to miss practice. He's still in concussion protocol. And then we'd go out to practice, and Goodwin would be practicing. So there was just some sort of weird disconnect when you had all these different people talking. So McDermott's going to be the guy that talks. And the one thing, you kind of have to read the tea leaves. You have to think he's the guy who really has his hands on all of the decisions here. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Doug Whaley's the general manager. He's going to have a say. Terry Pegula is the one who writes the checks, so he too will have a say. But I think partly why McDermott took this job is because he is going to have a lot of control. And I got to tell you, he's impressive. He's boring, but that's not a bad thing after what we've had in Buffalo for such a long time. I've really been impressed by the way he talks, the way he acts, and I think by the way the team has responded to him. Who knows how he is with personnel decisions? You can always pin it on Doug Whaley if it goes poorly, but I think at the end of the day, McDermott's going to be the loudest voice in that room.
Speaking of, I'm sorry, Matty, go ahead.
No, but I was at that press conference. I know both of us saw what happened there. What I really liked is him being stern. At one point, he even moved on in terms of what questions were being asked in the room to another question that wasn't about the draft. And he stopped answering that one for a second to go back to the previous one to make sure he put forth that he is going to have a lot to do with who gets picked in this draft.
That's interesting. That is interesting.
And I think you said it perfectly about McDermott, Matt, is I always feel like he's in control. Even when he's talking and answering a question that seems like it might be hard to answer, he doesn't let himself get backed into a corner. He feels like the man in control of the room, in control of the message. This team desperately, desperately needs that right now. And if that's the narrative moving forward, so be it.
Yeah, I always get the sense with Rex that he was in control of the microphone. But on draft day, I always got the feeling that he had a big old box of popcorn, sat back and said, grab somebody from Clemson and I'm happy. Yeah. And they just did that. And they figured, okay, we'll go with that Clemson tradition yet again. That's the sense that I always got from him. But I think you're right. I do get the sense just from even afar that McDermott is in much more control, and you're not going to see all the craziness that we saw with Rex. There won't be the show of throwing golf balls out of a helicopter at Jim Kelly's golf tournament. There won't be eating a dog biscuit at training camp. You won't have those things again. So
he's going to be a hard guy to meme, much to the internet's dismay.
Yeah.
McDermott's going to be a real tough meme.
I would feel unsafe if I memed him because I think he's a bare knuckle brawl me.
Well, he was a wrestler. He was I think a state champion in high school. So yeah, he'll pin all 3 of us.
You know what? I don't see any cauliflower ears, so probably good. He's probably good at it. No cauliflower ears.
So he will get your legs. He will get your legs straight.
My legs are done.
Wow. A nice inside joke from Toby. All right, let's stay with personnel matters. And a big one, as Toby teased, as only the best in the biz can do, with Sammy Watkins. Recently, Carolina and Tampa Bay have picked up their fifth year options, not fifth round, fifth year options on their first round draft picks from 2014 in Travis Benjamin and Mike Evans. Sorry, I was thinking of a different wide receiver. I don't know why. Mike Evans is down in Tampa Bay.
Evan Mikes.
So that leaves the Bills. May 2nd, the deadline. And by my calendar, that'll be this upcoming week, right? Or next week. A week from now, they've got.
I'm not a calendar
It's
scientist.
week after the draft.
Week after the draft, they've got. May 2nd, I believe it is, to decide on Sammy Watkins, to whether or not to pick up that fifth year. And there's been a lot of debate. So, Toby, do the Bills pick up that fifth year?
At first, I was like, why wouldn't you? And then I thought about it a little harder. I saw the numbers. His salary would almost double. It'd be a big cap hit. If you are worried that his second foot surgery isn't going according to plan, and I know they keep putting a good face on it and saying he's right on schedule, he'll be back.
Right.
Bottom line is you don't want to pay a guy who's not going to play, especially when you're the Bills and your cap situation is sort of a nightmare. It's not the worst in the league, but it certainly isn't good. So if you're going to commit to giving this guy a whole lot of money that's going to count right up against your cap in 2018, you want to be sure that he's going to be able to contribute. So I feel like, gosh, even if they're just waiting to make sure he doesn't have a setback with his foot in the next week, that they should wait as long as they can, because as talented as Sammy is, as much as he has produced when he's on the field, his last 8 games in 2015 were top receiver caliber numbers. You just can't compound the mistake of trading 2 draft picks for a guy by then paying him an exorbitant amount of money if he's going to miss 8 to 10 games in a year.
So that's what I was going to bring up. You paid so much for the guy. You paid so much to get him. Now, this I haven't read anywhere, so this is my own theory, and the wheels turning in my own head. Does he become draft bait? No one's talked about that. There's not been a story or anything about it. But does he become draft bait because they have to wait until after the draft? Is that a guy that maybe you throw in to try to, I don't know, pick up another wide? Do you go wide receiver for wide receiver? Do you go receiver for DB and then address your needs, in the draft? No one has said anything about it, and there's not a rumor. I don't want to start anything, but that's just a thought that I had that, hey, what are you waiting for? Well, maybe it's trade night, or maybe it's, draft night.
I think part of the issue in the NFL with trades like this and why draft picks are so valuable is their relative cost. Once the new CBA came into effect and rookie contracts got scaled and decreased dramatically, that became one of the most valuable things about these top first-round picks is you no longer have to pay them. What did Sam Bradford get, $60 million or something absurd before they implemented this rule just because he was the first pick in the draft? So it used to be that first pick, you almost didn't want it. Now it's pretty nice because it's a very manageable number. And so when you're going to trade a pick, you're usually going to do it for picks to keep your salary manageable. I'd be surprised if a guy like Sammy Watkins, who you're about to have to pay big money, is able to be exchanged for anything of value in terms of draft picks. I think that's going to be a hard sell for anybody to pick up that contract.
Getting away from the draft a little bit here, have you seen any update or heard about any update with Cyrus Kouandjio?
No, that has been completely and totally silent. Not even sure of his whereabouts at this point. And obviously, that's just a weird, scary situation. Thankfully, it was all resolved peacefully, it sounds like. But no update as of right now. And I don't think they have to give an update anytime soon with HIPAA laws and things like that. They can keep as much quiet as they want. And given this new Bills regime and the one voice and Sean McDermott, I don't foresee him, especially you were there, Matt, you heard him kind of try to brush it aside and avoid while some of Cyrus's teammates reacted. I don't foresee us knowing anything else until Cyrus is out and wants something known.
And then usually the soft-spoken Tyrod Taylor, that was one of the biggest takeaways from that day of talking to the media, is that he elaborated maybe the most I've ever seen. He was very worried about the guy.
Yeah, it was good to see Tyrod talk about his teammate like that. Give you a little insight into, even though he's pretty cold and harsh with the media, why his teammates genuinely do go to battle for him and really do like him is because he does seem to just have that family attitude in the locker room.
That's a good nugget. That's a good nugget, Toby. All right, let's get another one from you. Tell me something I don't know about the Buffalo Bills.
That the fun in the locker room is gone.
No.
It's so sad. Going into the locker room, you always used to have shouting matches between guys like LaShawn McCoy and Shaq Lawson over games of FIFA and Madden and NBA 2K. There'd be pool games going on. Those are gone. Sean McDermott has removed the video games, and the pool table from the locker room. But here's the other funny part. He left the ping pong table.
Oh,
and there's a
interesting.
reason. I thought he was kidding when he said this, but when he was asked, why did you leave the ping pong table, he gave a 2-word answer and did not laugh. Ball skills. And people kind of chuckled and tried to figure out if he was joking. I don't think he was kidding. I think he genuinely believes the ping pong table is there for ball skills. So obviously, just again, another contrast from Sean McDermott and Rex Ryan. No more grand yelling, shouting matches. No more tallies in the locker room. Reggie Bush was really, really good at FIFA. He had more wins in FIFA than yards last season. I can tell you that much.
Oh, my God.
My, oh, my.
Something we didn't know about the Buffalo Bills from Toby Motyka. The sports anchor reporter extraordinaire at 13 WHAM Sports in Rochester.
Yeah, you have fun this week there at the Rocky Steps.
That's right. I forgot to mention this. Toby's going to be at the draft. Why did I do that at the very beginning? That's a fail by me.
The Rocky Steps threw me off. Threw everybody off.
Real quick. What do you make of that? The fact that they're going to be on the Rocky Steps.
It's supposed to be really hot and humid, isn't it?
Oh.
Which means it's going to rain.
I'm glad I'm not going.
It's supposed to be pretty hot and humid in Philadelphia. That thing's going to be a spectacle. If you ever doubted that the NFL runs the world, that they're shutting down that much of Philadelphia to plant this thing outside, and boy, that's going to be a spectacle. Thousands of people are going to be able to be there if the weather's nice. It's supposed to be. It probably will translate well with a drone camera. I think that's what it's going to take to get the full effect.
Well, we'll get down there and get one for you, Toby, because you got to have that exclusive footage. Although the NFL will probably shoot it down because they'll have...
Oh, yeah. Like, actually shoot it down.
Yeah. All right. One Toby Motyka of 13 WHAM Sports in Rochester, New York. He will be at the draft. Follow him on Twitter at Toby Motyka. Find his stuff at 13wham.com.
You got it.
All right, look at that. I work for the competition, still know it. Toby, thanks for the time, buddy.
Anytime, guys.
All right, some bump music there. Around the corner... Another FOTS. We had a FOTS, then following up with a FOTS. Patrick Wu of the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
He stopped by to talk the player side of this. We got the team. We'll get the player side next on TBD.
The 2017 NFL Draft, it's almost here. Back here on TBD as well.
Days away, depending on when you're listening to it. At Sports by Bond with at Trabs Matt. I've done that every block so far.
Yeah.
So far, because it's only the C block.
The C block.
If I've
I gotta
done
look
my
down. I gotta look down. C block.
If I've done my algebra correctly, it is the C block. Joined by at P_Woo. Is that the Twitter handle? Patrick Wu?
Sure is. How are you guys?
Doing very well. How
Good.
are you,
Thanks
sir?
for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Want to get
Trable, for our listeners that don't know, you and I go way back. So it's great to see you doing big things here.
Yes. Right back at you.
There you go.
Obviously.
There you go. Want to get the title correct. The scout coordinator for the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, essentially, unless you guys want to give me a promotion here on the show or whatever.
Listen, we're glad to do it. I don't know that it's going to mean anything, but...
the personnel director of To Be Determined. How about that?
That's not bad.
That's the show, right? To Be Determined?
To Be Determined. There we go.
All right,
not a working title.
That's actually the title. Some people are like, oh, okay. In a couple of weeks, they're going to have the real thing. No, that's actually the title. To Be Determined.
That's all we came up with. That's all we came up with. I don't. It is what it is. All right, let's jump into the 2017 NFL Draft. Patrick joining us to talk more about the player side because as a scout, he sees a ton of players, obviously. Patrick, this draft class, it's been said by many of Talking Head that it's not the strongest at quarterback. Do you concur with that assessment? What have you seen?
Yeah, it's a difficult draft if you really need a franchise quarterback or a rookie quarterback that you need to come in and start right away. And This is a quarterback draft class that I'd be scared to take any of these guys in the top 10. But certainly there are some big names that have some big traits, and they've obviously probably won some teams over throughout this interview process. So, obviously the big three, I think it's fair to say, would be Patrick Mahomes of Texas Tech, Deshaun Watson of Clemson, the national champion, and Mitch Trubisky out of North Carolina. And some people obviously want to throw Deshaun Kaiser of Notre Dame in that mix too. I'm not a big believer in Deshaun Kaiser. I think there are some off-the-field concerns with him as well, but you can't deny the arm talent. I think if you're looking at somebody who you can develop and work with, which in today's NFL, guys, you're in such a rush to win with your quarterback right now that not a lot of teams are given the flexibility to sit and develop a guy like an Aaron Rodgers did behind Brett Favre. Of course, the Packers were winning with Brett Favre, so Aaron Rodgers was in a good situation. But Patrick Mahomes, if he were to go to a New Orleans Saints behind Drew Brees or a Phillip Rivers behind the Los Angeles Chargers, that could be a good situation. But if you need Patrick Mahomes to come in and play right away, I think there could be some growing pains. He's played essentially backyard football his entire life. And we saw him at the Manning Passing Academy, which is where we saw all of these guys actually, except for Mitch Trubisky. And that's kind of where we start our quarterback scouting, is out there in Thibodaux, Louisiana. And all you hear about is the pure arm strength of Mahomes. And I guess he threw an 80-yard pass at his pro day. Wow. But you didn't really see the zip come out of his hand at the live exposure at the Manning Academy. Now, at the NFL Combine, it was a different story. So, it can vary by environment. But I like his pedigree. I think he does have the arm talent. But his dad, obviously, is a former Major League Baseball player. With Watson, obviously, you get a pure winner. And somebody who's played in the biggest stages of his career already and has really produced against two of the top defenses he might face in his entire career, with Alabama's 2015 defense and Alabama's 2016 defense. Those are NFL defenses that he carved up in back-to-back years. So if you need somebody who's mentally ready to come in and right away, maybe that's your guy, Deshaun Watson. Trubisky, to me, though, is the total package. I think he's got the leadership, the arm talent, the footwork. But what I like about Trubisky is he's been accurate, but he also goes through a lot of full field progressions. I don't see Mahomes do that in the Texas Tech system. You don't see Deshaun Watson really do that at Clemson. And then the guy that I really am intrigued by, guys, is Davis Webb of California. Now, this is a guy that's been a captain at two schools, Texas Tech and California, as a graduate transfer. He's got some of the best arm talent. He can really pinpoint his target at times if his footwork is right. I think if you need somebody that you really want to work on and develop, Mahomes and Davis Webb are your guys. I would not be surprised if Davis Webb sneaks into the first round of the NFL draft. I think he won a lot of people over here in Mobile at the Reese Senior Bowl with his leadership, his intangibles, the pure size, 6'5", 230, sneaky athleticism. And the best thing, probably, guys, is the fact that he's a coach's son, and I think you really, really like that about a guy in terms of the intangibles. He's been around the game his entire life, and he's the son of a coach.
So it's obviously not quarterback, but if you were to look at all the positions of this draft, which one has the most talent across the board?
Across the board, probably the defensive backs. You could see 10 or 11, maybe a dozen defensive backs come off the board in the top 50 picks of this year's draft. Wow. And then after those guys all go off the board, you're going to see a lot more go off the board in the third, fourth, and fifth rounds. I think there are a ton of corners and safeties. There's also some really good nickel DB prospects. Of course, the nickel has essentially become a full-time position in today's game of football. And then the safety class. This is a very, very impressive safety class. Obviously, you have a Malik Hooker from Ohio State. That's kind of the headliner. But I think people have forgotten about Eddie Jackson out of Alabama because of his injury. He's coming back from that. Obi Melifonwu from UConn is a guy who really used the Reese Senior Bowl to his advantage. Of course, he looks the part. But you go down to these later rounds. John Johnson out of Boston College is a guy that I really like. We have an interview with him on SeniorBowl.com. He had a really good week down here in Mobile. He's fluid. He's athletic. But he's a guy who started both at corner and safety in his career. And he actually told me, he said, hey, these teams don't even know where I'm going to play. One team told me, hey, you're not a safety, you're a corner. One team said, hey, we could use you at both spots. So the versatility in this class obviously helps. And then I think the edge rushers are a good group. I feel like we had a good group of edge rushers last year. I think you look at some of these mid to late round edge rushers this year. Vince Beagle out of Wisconsin is a guy that we had here in Mobile. very similar to Joe Schobert from Wisconsin last year, who was a 4th-round pick. And then the guy that was kind of a one-year wonder was Carroll Phillips from Illinois. Coming into the year, DeJuan Smoot had all of his first-round hype over the summer. I remember talking to Lovie Smith, the Illinois head coach at Big Ten Media Day, and Lovie Smith said, hey, watch Smoot now. He's going to be a first-rounder. And obviously you value that opinion because Lovie Smith has won as a head coach in the NFL. He knows what an NFL player looks like. Now, obviously, Smoot's hype has died down considerably, but because of all the double teams that he commanded, Carroll Phillips had a huge year, and he showed off his ability to bend the edge and convert speed to power and dropping the coverage a little bit as well here in Mobile. So you can find an edge rusher, I think, late in this draft as well. So edge rushers and DBs.
Patrick Rue, the scout coordinating at the Reese's Senior Bowl. Make sure we get that plug in there.
Very nice.
Give us a name that's on the rise. Maybe someone that we're not familiar with, or if there's somebody that's just shot up this draft board, somebody that's captivated some attention.
Your Reese's is in the mail for that little plug there. I mentioned Davis Webb earlier. I really would not be surprised if he went to the first round.
Wow.
But, not to expand too much on Davis Webb. Hassan Reddick, I think, is the no-brainer. He's risen the most throughout this entire process. He dominated here at the Senior Bowl, the Reese's Senior Bowl. He dominated. He had a great showing at the NFL Combine. And he's a really charismatic guy. Now, there's the off-the-field incident when he was at Temple, but Temple head coach Matt Rule is a good friend of mine and Phil Savage's, and Matt Rule will 100% vouch for Hassan Reddick's off-the-field character. And he's got such good position versatility. He can rush the passer from the outside. He showed at the Reese's Senior Bowl that he can play an off-the-ball linebacker position. Matt Rule even said that, hey, this guy's an NFL will linebacker. And he certainly showed the ability to be that at the Reese's Senior Bowl in Mobile. Other than that, I think Garyon Conley, the Ohio State cornerback. Marshawn Lattimore gets all of the hype, redshirt sophomore, first-year starter.
Right.
I think people forget Garyon Conley was the guy opposite of Eli Apple last year and had a great year on his own. And now he declared early for the NFL draft this year. I've seen his name shoot up in some of these mock drafts more recently, and this hype has started to really finally catch up to him in terms of the media. But NFL evaluators will tell you that Garyon Conley is somebody who they've had graded high throughout this entire process. It's just that the public hype was not there. And Garyon Conley, guys, was actually a fourth-year junior graduate at Ohio State, and we reached out to him in terms of whether he wanted to participate in the Reese's Senior Bowl, and he said he was not interested. You've seen what the Reese's Senior Bowl can do for some of these prospects in terms of being that platform that they jump off of, propel themselves off of throughout this NFL draft process and continue that momentum. Obi Melifonwu has done that. Davis Webb has done that. Hassan Reddick has done that. I think Garyon Conley missed an opportunity to do that. But just in terms of the public perception, because inside these NFL walls, I think he's definitely up there.
Ali Marpet, I think, did that last year. A guy that was a Division III prospect that nobody really heard of, and then went down to the Senior Bowl, and all of a sudden, I think, jumped up a bunch of draft boards, and Tampa scooped him up in the second round. So it does show you the impact of it. Yeah,
I remember you tweeting about him, and then all of a sudden, I haven't even heard of him, and he's right where I live, and all of a sudden, he's getting drafted there early. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, well, that was a Phil Savage special right there. Phil, throughout his 20-plus years in the NFL, loves going to the small schools. When he was a consultant with the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm pretty sure he went to Howie Roseman and said, hey, just give me the small schools that nobody wants to go to. And that's essentially what Phil did. He loves going to these small schools. We've had a number of small school prospects. I think 30% of our roster comes from FCS or lower non-FBS schools, because that's really, if you look at it, about 30% of NFL rosters are comprised of non-FBS prospects as well. So we try to kind of mimic that, the shaping of an NFL roster. But Phil Savage actually went up to New York. I can't even remember the town where Hobart is.
Geneva.
Geneva.
Yeah.
Geneva, yes. And saw Ali Marpet, and he really stands. At that level, you really have to stand out.
Yeah.
Marpet certainly did that.
So you've been to your share of pro days leading up to this draft. What is the most notable moment or player that you have witnessed at one of those?
Last year was Derrick Henry at Alabama running routes for Jake Coker and making that one-handed deep ball catch down the sideline. That's probably still the most notable pro day moment that I've had in my short career. We're standing there watching this and said, Derrick Henry, if he doesn't pan out as a running back, we'll just move him to tight end or H-back. We'll be just fine. Certainly it's paid off for the Tennessee Titans so far, taking Henry in the second round. The guy that I really like is Marcus May at Florida. Florida obviously had a big showing at his pro day because of the defensive talent there, especially at the defensive back level. Marcus May was really disappointed he couldn't come play in the Reese Senior Bowl because of his arm injury. He did come to interview with NFL teams. He's a super individual character-wise off the field. He's an outstanding player. I think his tape really speaks for itself. And I think people have kind of forgotten about him because he hasn't been able to do much. He didn't participate in the Senior Bowl. He didn't participate in the Combine. And people didn't really focus on him at the Pro Day because you had Tease Tabor at corner, you had Quincy Wilson at corner, and Caleb Brantley at defensive back, Jared Davis and Alex Anzalone at linebacker. So people completely, I think, forgot about Marcus May. But he's one of my favorite players, had a great showing at his Pro Day. And speaking of one-handed catches at Pro Days, Quincy Wilson, had a really nice one-handed snag, made it look easy in the DB drills at Florida's Pro Day as well. So in terms of players, those would be the most notable moments. In terms of kind of light moments, I'll tell you this story that happened in Gainesville. The way that they set up, every team sets up the 40-yard dashes differently. Some people will just have all of the scouts line up at the 40-yard line. Some people will put up bleachers and then have, platforms to stand above the people in the bleachers behind. So Florida had bleachers, but also we started to line up single file at the 40 behind the bleachers. And when you're in the line behind the bleachers, you obviously have an angle to the start line of the 40, and it's very important to get the start. You want to start that watch as soon as that prospect's hand comes off the ground. And if you can't see that, then you're not going to get an accurate time, obviously. Well, Blake Williams, who we had here on the coaching staff with the Cleveland Browns, coaching the Reese Senior Bowl South team, the son of Greg Williams, great coach, outstanding coach. He's standing in the line of sight. And I'm not going to tell y'all what team scouts were around me, but we're all kind of looking at each other like, all right, can you guys see? And the answer was no with everybody. So we say, so we got Coach Williams to take a few steps back so he could clear the line of sight to the start line. But then it turns out it didn't matter, guys, because as soon as Coach Williams stepped back, there was Coach Bill Belichick standing right there in the line of sight. And we looked at each other. We said, all right, somebody's time to shine because I ain't asking Coach Belichick to move. And needless to say, guys, none of us asked Coach Bill Belichick to take a few steps back, and we're all just turning our heads, trying to flexing our bodies one way or the other, trying to see the start line around Coach Belichick.
Like, Bill, get out of the way. That's all. That's a great story.
You should have been there. See, it sounds like you can tell him to get out of the way. Seems like you've practiced that.
We'd have no repercussions, though.
Well, see, I could talk a big game now, but that would be very intimidating. Very intimidating. Alrighty, so Notre Dame defensive lineman Jerron Jones hails from up here in Western New York. Have you heard anything about when and where he might go?
Yeah, he's really an enigma of a prospect. I think at times he's shown first-round talent. He certainly has first-round athletic ability. He's got the size, 6'5", 35.5-inch arms. He's got elite length, interior quickness, which is really what you want because you really want to create more pressure in today's NFL from the A and B gaps, and Jerron Jones can do that. I think if you go back to the Miami game, he looked like a first-round pick. 6 tackles for loss, I think it was, a few sacks in that game, going against a right guard in Danny Isidora that we had at the Reese Senior Bowl. So it's not like he was beating up on a mediocre offensive line at Miami. It was a talented group. They've got some seniors next year as well up front. But you want to see that every game, every week, or in practice every day, and you don't. You really don't. Yep. And there's a lot of off-the-field character concerns with him. There's a lot of motivation concerns with him. The inconsistency is hard to really get by. And, you go back to that Miami game, though, and you're like, okay, this guy has first-round ability. Much like Deshaun Kaiser at that Texas game opening night. You thought you were looking at the number 1 overall pick, but you didn't get that every week. Yeah. And I think at this point, because of the off-the-field concerns, I think you don't see Jerron Jones come off the board until probably day 3.
Wow, that's interesting that he has fallen that much. Because I remember last year, or going into his senior year, there was a lot of discussion before he hurt the knee that's a guy that,
like how he was rehabbing.
And even before that. No, even before that. I'm talking just how talented he was before the injury. Yeah. Now, you add into, again, the injury, how he was rehabbing, and as Patrick said, some of the off-the-field stuff, that motivational stuff. That's troubling for NFL teams. I mean, that to me is a giant red flag. And I think, as you mentioned, I think you're spot on that he is a day 3 pick. So,
you know what I think, guys, and this is just personal opinion. This is not any NFL team's philosophy, just my personal opinion, that when you have players with character off the field red flags, or the motivation red flag, like with Jones here, that's almost harder for me to overcome than it is if the player has gotten arrested or failed a drug test, because you can learn from those mistakes. And you can do things as an organization to put that player in a successful environment and help him overcome those obstacles in his off-the-field life. But when you have a guy who's not motivated or is lazy on the field, doesn't love the game of football, doesn't care if you take it away. Because some of these guys that have off-the-field problems, football is their life.
Right.
And if you threaten to take that away from them because of their off-the-field concerns, they'll straighten up.
Yeah.
But when football is not the passion and be-all, end-all for you in terms of motivation, that to me is harder to overcome, because how can you really fix that?
No, it's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a good point. All right, that does it for the business. Let's dive into the non-business part of it, I guess.
Get away from football a little bit.
All right, there we go. That's the best way to do it. I'll ask this question. I know Maddie would like to, but I'm going to ask it anyways because I already know the answer, and I'm outnumbered yet again. Your alma mater, sir.
Penn State. I thought it was a trick question. Y'all were getting ready to have some dialogue or something. I was waiting for Treyball to step in since he knows the answer.
Oh, that's a fair point. And I was looking very excited there too.
You were, because we've had what, like 4 Penn Staters on now, something like that.
All right, number 2, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, geez. I've only ever thought of it as a hot dog. You know,
That's fine.
That's
a lot of
fair
people
point.
say that.
Yeah.
wait, do you call what is a hamburger a sandwich? Because a hamburger and a hot dog go on quote buns. We call them buns, right? But if it's a sandwich, you put it on bread.
I don't know if I have an answer for you. That's a good question. That's a good question.
That is.
Is there a difference between breads, like sandwiches, or buns?
See,
like
we're looking at the meat. We're looking at the meat. We got to look at the vessel.
Bread.
The
That's
vessel.
true. Oh,
The bread. I like that. I like
hand
that.
motion there, Maddie.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't. I don't know.
We'll have to be that on
All
the
right.
video version.
Oh,
All right,
boy.
how do you pronounce it? GIF or GIF?
It's definitely a GIF. I hear people say GIF, and I get so thrown off. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? It's a
GIF is peanut butter. That's
Well,
what I think of with GIF.
But hey, words can have multiple meanings.
That's true. Fair enough. God. All right.
Like buns.
Like
all
buns.
right. All right. What's your favorite beer?
Favorite beer? Root beer. How about that? Not the biggest drinker in the world.
Okay, that's fine.
But if y'all get me a case of Muggs root beer, I'll be your friend for life.
And, hey, that's a first.
Say,
That is definitely
you're
a first.
You're sending us candy. We'll send you root beer.
We could do that. We could make that happen.
Sweet. I don't know.
Exchange.
Sweet exchange.
There you go.
I like it.
Where can we find you on the internet?
SeniorBowl.com, I guess. Staff page. Twitter. At P_Woo, as y'all mentioned earlier. Also have, Treyball, you went to the same school as me, Penn State's College of Communications. You got to create like your professional website and all that as part of, I forget what class it was.
I forgot.
So technically I still have that quote professional portfolio website, PatrickWoo.com. It's not exactly updated, but at least tells you who I am.
Yeah.
You got to, as Mike Foreman at Penn State would always say, right, Treyball, you got to buy your name. That's his biggest piece of advice is buy your name. So PatrickWoo.com. It's owned by Patrick Woo.
I see. I didn't do that, which is why I have the jankiest.
Is there a
Gmail.
lot? Is there a lot of Stephen Bonds?
There's a Dr. Stephen Bond.
Oh,
it's not me.
Well, you were
It's
never
far
going to get
from
that
it.
anyways. You're losing that.
The
from the
email
start.
or the title.
Yeah.
All right, Patrick Woo, the scouting coordinator for the Reese's Senior Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama. Patrick, thank you so much for the time, my man.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll roll the bump music. We'll tease the final block, D block. We've done the team side. We've done the player side. The fan side is the only one left to do. That's next on TBD.
You're you. I'm me. I hope you listen to the top of the show to figure out our names. This is to be determined.
At Sports by Bond with at Trabs Matt, joined by. Now I don't want to mess this up. It's at Del Reid, right? That's the Twitter handle?
Yep.
All right. Del Reid, the founder of 26 Shirts and one of the co-founders of the Bills Mafia, which is the Bills fan base. They created the Bills Mafia and really the hashtag that has taken over the internet on Sundays in and around Western New York and the world, really.
Yeah.
Del Reid, thanks for joining us.
Guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
This, this show all about the draft, and so as we're previewing this, we're looking forward to Thursday's opening round because it's a number of days now.
Yeah.
We're getting the reporter side of it, so we're getting the team side. We're getting the scouting side, so we're getting the player side. But the one aspect of this that no one ever thinks of is the fan stuff. And so my thought initially was we got to get somebody with the Bills Mafia, and I couldn't think of a better person than Del. So I sent him a Twitter message, and he thankfully agreed to come on because otherwise I would have been stumped. It would have just been down to a couple of guys that I know that like the Bills. So wanted to get the fan perspective. So let's go a little broad before we dive into the draft. The state of the team it's gone through a number of changes as of late. There's been a lot of question marks with the Bills. They've answered a few of those, but there's still a number that are looming. Where do I guess a majority of fans, and I know you're only one, but you do have such interaction with the base. Where do fans think the team is right now?
It's funny you should say that because it's all over the place. I mean, in past years, I've kind of been able to kind of like take the temperature of the fan base, pretty easily. But it really seems like, and I don't know if it's because there's like more people on Twitter than ever before, or what the story is, or maybe just because we're in the midst of our third transition in 6 years or whatever it is. But so everybody's kind of gone off in different directions. But I think there's a lot of different opinions, and that's probably the worst possible answer to give you to a question like that.
It was very broad to begin with.
Yeah. It's I guess that's the answer. It's all over the place, more so than I think the past 5 or 6 years that at least I've been on Twitter, really seeing these varying opinions. It's really interesting, and now everybody has a Twitter account. So if you're a fan, you have a Twitter account. It used to be like, oh, these are all the the phone nerds or all the whatever. Now it's just like, well, you're breathing, so you have a Twitter account or you have some kind of social media presence. So
and I think also because of the change, that breeds a bunch of different opinions because the change has been so rapid over the past couple of years. That answer actually I don't think is too bad.
Yeah. So every other mock draft, it seems like right now, has the Bills doing something different at that 10th pick. Where do fans want to see the Bills go at that 10th pick?
Oh, same answer. I've seen a lot of. Oops, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Actually, it's fun notice.
I thought their Bills were drafting right there. Actually, they're on the clock.
No, but in terms of what fans are looking for, it depends. Like there's every year, it doesn't matter if they've got. If Tom Brady were the Bills, that feels gross saying it.
It does feel weird.
If Joe Montana in his prime was the Bills quarterback, you'd always have that section of fans that wants to draft a quarterback. That's just like, that seems like, and that's hyperbole, but like there's always that, they're always going to have that group of fans that wants a quarterback no matter what. Wide receiver is is spoken of a lot in terms of what I've seen. And spoken with people about in terms of Corey Davis or Mike Williams, stuff like that. But then obviously you have everybody wants a linebacker as well. So it's again all over the place. I can only speak to my own real thoughts on that. But in terms of what the fans want, I feel it's really awkward to speak for fans.
Sure.
When I'm just one person who has a Twitter account and I'm equal to everybody else. But
right, no. Where would you like to see the Bills go then? What do you think they do at number 10? I've been thinking this for a while, and I'm far. Just as a full disclaimer, I am far from a college football expert. I don't pretend to be on Twitter when people ask me. I'm like, I don't know. What do you want? I have no idea. I follow enough sports, and I really value my marriage, so it's really difficult for me to. Sacrifice one more day a Saturday afternoon watching college football as well. So I kind of like the season ends and then I just start playing catch up. So in terms of where the draft is going and everything, but gotcha.
It would be great to get another wide receiver. And I say that with the caveat because what's kind of frustrated me a little bit this whole off season, the prevailing theme has been off for the most part, like Tyrod Taylor. We need to figure out what we're gonna do with Tyrod Taylor. We need to get weapons for Tyrod Taylor. And again, sorry about all those dings. Like there's a lot of draft picks coming in right now, and I have no idea how to turn that off on my iMessage. But,
no problem.
We'll just have to deal with it. We'll just have to roll with it.
I like it.
Cool, thanks. And but the offense did okay. I mean, the offense had lots of problems last year. That's probably not even fair to say lots of problems. They had a fairly well-scoring offense, but it seems like the whole offseason narrative has been about these offensive skill positions.
Yep.
When the past 2 seasons, what's been the main problem with the Bills? It's been the defensive performance.
Yeah.
And I feel like that hasn't been as a big talking point, at least as I thought it should be, in terms of like what everybody's talking about. But I think it's too easy to just assume that the Bills are going to go right back to being a good defense now that Rex is gone, and you know they've got a new guy in. And I just, as an aside, I really love the Sean McDermott hire. Everything I've read, it seems great. I mean, obviously, the Pagulas, love him, and I think Sal Capaccio said that Terry Pagula's comments in his presser last week about the Sabres, you could tell Sean McDermott has already had some kind of influence. But that's a whole other part of the conversation with the coach. But I don't think the defense has gotten enough mileage in terms of conversation in this offseason. And I say that, and I don't want to be black and white because this is the NFL and conversation is dominant 24/7, 365. So, I mean, there's always somebody talking about every subject. But it just is in my anecdotal, experience or whatever that they could really use some defensive help. And I'm saying that just after having said, probably wide receiver.
You're going wide receiver. No, it's funny. Every mock draft that I've looked at, and I think I've looked at least a dozen this week already, it has the Bills doing something different. If it's wide receiver, if it's a DB, there's even been a ton that have said they're going to move around, which Toby Motyka of 13 WHAM in Rochester said earlier to us that, it's very likely they move around. Even quarterback has been thrown out there. What do you make of the whole quarterback situation? If they do decide to stay with 10 or move around and take a quarterback in the first round, even though they've locked up Tyrod for the next couple of years, and it seems like he is the guy.
Yeah, he's definitely the guy for the next couple of years. And I think really early on in his tenure, Sean McDermott, I think, wasn't it the owners' meetings or somewhere, he said, at this time, when talking about the quarterback and everything, Tyrod's a great solution at this time. I'm misquoting that, paraphrasing it, whatever. But yeah, so in terms of what they're going to do at quarterback or at 10, one real quick point is, and only the past couple of years have mock drafts started to really do this, but every year within the first 4 picks, like everything is blown up because you've had 5 trades for 4 picks.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so much movement. I would love to see the tracking, especially since around the 2012 draft, since the rookie wage scale was put in place. It's not as dangerous to draft a top pick in terms of finances and everything. I would love to see the before and afters in terms of where players, I mean, I guess I could easily look it up on Wikipedia, or where teams were picking originally before the trades began, and then where they ended up. Because there's so much movement. So that's just, I'm going off on a rabbit trail.
Well, no, the Bills have done it twice, so that's interesting. I mean, they moved back to get EJ, and then they move up to get Sammy, and that's the 2 drafts following the 2012 draft. So yeah, it's an interesting little nugget.
Yeah, and Doug Whaley is definitely of that new NFL blood in terms of not being afraid to draft and move around and take risks. And I should probably make a Trader Doug's T-shirt, just like Trader Joe's or something like that.
That's not bad.
I like that.
Show my hand here, but so yeah, who knows what's going to happen in terms of how that first round is going to play out.
So moving away from the draft now, you're obviously very plugged into the fan base. Do fans want to see the Bills pick up Sammy Watkins' 5th-year option?
Am I the only one that thinks that this is some kind of weird smokescreen or something? Like, it's, I don't know. It just seems like a no-brainer. Like, pick up his 5th year. You traded the farm for him. Pick up his 5th year. He's had some injury issues, but like, you gave up so much for him. I still like. I'm kind of like. I don't know. I'm just.
You're speechless at it.
I don't know. It seems like. Come on, you look at your. For me, I don't understand where that rumor's coming from. Like, I think they have to.
It's interesting. Toby said to us that cap space could play into it just because of how big that 5th-year option would be. I don't know what he's due to make on that 5th year, but because the budget is so tight, so to speak, I think they have to be mindful of that. And if it's a guy that is going to be injured or has had those injury troubles, you're going to pay that kind of money. You need somebody to be out there. You've got to be present and accounted for on Sundays.
Yeah, but I see where you're coming from. Just seeing it the way through. Yeah,
well, what you paid for him, and that makes sense. And I think a lot of fans feel that way. Is that you gave up 2 number 1s. We haven't really seen what Sammy Watkins can be. There's always been the potential. I feel like that's the biggest word around.
It's still
Sammy.
there. Yeah.
So you have to finish that story. You don't. Yeah, he's been banged up and all that stuff. I'm still, I wouldn't call him injury prone at this point. He's had some tough go with this and everything. But I'm probably a lousy interview for me just to go, but like that's how I feel when they talk about not picking up his fifth-year options. Like you traded the farm for him, you're picking up the option, and you're going to ride it out. You're going to either take your medicine or whatever it is. But because what's going to happen? What happens is this is how the Bills work, as you know, or how life with everything works. They would not pick up that 5th year. He would go somewhere probably very close to the Boston area. He would go somewhere and he would blow up that 1st year. And then we have Bills fans outside the cap. No, we're calling it the cap.
Yeah.
Saying Harry Carey or whatever. So like it's not. I guess I would not be surprised in that case in terms of how everything works in the Bills.
Yeah.
But you got to pick it up. I mean, I can't believe it's a talking point.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's amazing. It really is. Who knows? We'll get back into the draft a little bit. I guess this is where this question focuses around. Pegula he's trigger happy, I guess is the way I put it earlier, with wanting to, or his notion that he can just fire who he wants from a front office perspective, and he's got deep enough pockets to do it, and he's not afraid, I guess, to pull the trigger when it comes to those front office people. Doug Whaley has survived it, despite the rumors, despite maybe some of the calls for his head. Are you satisfied with the job that Doug Whaley has done?
Oh, that's a good question. I am, and I'm not. But see, this is part of the problem with the Bills, at least from a fan's perspective, is I don't know who calls the shots. I don't know who writes the contracts, because they've written some really poorly done contracts the past several years, whether we're talking about Darius not having any kind of clause in terms of substance abuse. He's the highest paid athlete in Buffalo sports history, and you don't have like anything in place for somebody. Things like that, and that's not a thing on Darius. Good for him. He got a contract that didn't have stipulations. It's who's writing these contracts, who's putting a lot of this stuff together, who's giving Chris Hogan and Mike Gillislee these tenders. Is it somebody like Whaley? Is it Overdorf? Is it somebody else? That's part of the problem. So sometimes it's too easy just to say, oh, Doug Whaley sucks. And that's on the organization as a whole, at least from a fan's perspective. Like, it's not their obligation to lay everything out for us in terms of how they make their decisions. It's their obligation to make sure they've got 53 dudes, 16 Sundays in a row, and there to play games. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really torn on Doug Whaley, and that's such a waffling answer, but I'm really torn because he's done some great things. Look at some of the players he's brought in terms of, Zach Brown last year, Lorenzo Alexander, retaining Lorenzo Alexander for the next 2 years. And those are just the two immediate from this, the season. Even Mike Gillislee, I just mentioned him. So it's two sides of that coin. So it's not knowing who's making these decisions. We don't even know who drafted EJ. We don't. The story is it was Buddy Nixon. That was his farewell gift to the franchise. But then you have somebody who's the new GM the following year who is basically doubling down on EJ by trading up to get Sammy Watkins when the whole ownership structure is in flux. So why would Doug Whaley double down on something that he wasn't even the one who originally, drafted? So I don't know. And it's really confusing because when you look at past drafts, like Doug Marrone standing up and walking out after they drafted Sammy Watkins and stuff like that, it's there's been a lot of chaos in the past several years. Now the team, at least from the I keep saying things from the fans' perspective, but like from, for the people that have that perspective, they've done a good job so far of making Sean McDermott the face of the franchise. They've got a new person in place. I think it's Scott Boykin. Last name is Boykin, I know. And the new head PR and everything. So that's going to change, I think, a little bit in terms of what we see. So I am all over the place on Doug Whaley, and it's tough when you don't know who's making the decisions. How can I say, oh, fire Whaley or fire Russ or fire Jim Overdorf? I don't know who's responsible
making the
for
decisions.
What.
No, good point.
Yeah, but I really like those points about Zach Brown and Alexander. No, I really do like those points about Alexander and Zach Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. He's really good at finding that second-tier talent or third-tier talent. That's no slight on Brown or Alexander. You guys know what I mean in terms of like free agencies.
They were unknown guys that came here. They gave him an opportunity, and they thrived with the opportunity.
So changing gears now, so the NFL came out with the schedule last Thursday. Bills have quite the road here again to snap that 17-year playoff drought. So in 2017, Buffalo, it's been said 5th toughest schedule in the league. So how optimistic are fans that the drought ends at 17, or is it going to 18?
I don't know. Thursday night, I didn't see a lot of optimism. So I have not seen a lot of like, oh yeah, we got this. They've got a tough road to go, especially after their bye.
Right.
But it is what it is. The NFL, every game is hard, and we all make fun of, at least I made fun of Dick Duran for saying it's hard to win in this league. But it's hard to win in this league. I mean, every team is comprised of professionals, and maybe not the Browns the past couple of years, but like every team is but these are all talented guys. They're the best of the best, and it's tough to win games. So, in terms of this 2017 schedule, it's going to be difficult. There's no doubt about it. They've got some like I said, some struggles they're going to have to work through. But the NFL is a gauntlet, so.
It changes. Last year, we all thought Carolina was going to be spectacular, and you see what happens with the Panthers' downfall. So, things change, but yeah, from an initial perspective, things do not look good. All right, Del, let's dive a little bit away from football. You are the founder of 26 Shirts. I always want to say 26 T-shirts, but it's 26 Shirts. Tell us a little bit about, the company and what you guys are working on.
Yeah, so we started in 2013. It grew out of the whole Bills Mafia movement, the Buffalo fan base 501c3 that we have that kind of grew out of that. I originally intended it for it to fall under that umbrella, but just in terms of the way a nonprofit works and with merchandise sales and everything, kind of had to be its own separate thing. It's a long story. I won't get into it now just for the sake of time, but basically I partnered with a local T-shirt company in Buffalo and had the idea to sell, 26 designs in a year. It was going to be a 1-year community service project that I was going to do. And the idea just kind of took off. And now we're in the middle of our 4th volume, and we've raised over $360,000 for different families and charities. And we've expanded into more cities. So it's more than just Buffalo. So the whole idea is every 2 weeks we sell a different limited edition design. That's where the number comes from, 52 divided by 2. I have to say that for me, that was such a no-brainer. Doesn't seem like anybody gets it.
Right.
So now it's like some catchy number, right? But that's where the number comes from. And we completely throw people off because now we do special editions and comebacks, and it's a lot more than 26 designs, but that's at the heart of it.
Excellent.
Awesome.
What's the latest design? Can you reveal yet or no?
Yeah, sure. Why not? It goes live at midnight. We've actually leaked it already out through our email newsletter. It's called Coach's Gym. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Sean McDermott is kind of jacked.
Yes, yes, he is.
Jacked. Like, let's just, he's not some wavy guy. I guess when you're that age, like he's in his early 40s, and you're gonna be hanging around these professional athletes. Like you gotta be able to you gotta be part of that community, right? So so we have the shirt's called Coach's Gym. And it's made to look like one of those Gold's Gym or those other different kinds of, in the T-shirt community, that's a really popular spoof is doing gym T-shirts based on different, fictional characters. So we did one Coach's Gym. It says Playoff Caliber, of course.
Very nice. Very nice.
And it's a really over-exaggerated caricature of the new coach lifting up a bunch of weights and everything. So
very nice.
It's awesome.
Very nice. It. It's a little different, but when you have 26 designs a year, sometimes you have to go kind of niche and you have to find different ideas. So, we hope people like it. I like it.
And that's at 26shirts.com?
Yep, 26shirts.com. And it supports Golisano Children's Hospital through a 501c3 named Pennies for Penelope, which is named after a little infant girl out in Western New York area who passed away after just a few days.
So you're getting a great tea, and it's going for a good cause.
Yeah.
Del Reid, we really appreciate the time, my man. Little insight on a fan's perspective, something a little different. We appreciate the time, my man.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, Maddie, episode 8 of To Be Determined. I went halfway there between TBD and To Be Determined.
Yeah, you did.
In the books. Our thanks to Toby Motyka, 13 WHAM Sports in Rochester, New York, for bringing his A game and breaking down the Bills side of stuff. Our thanks to Patrick Wu, the scouting coordinator for the Reese's Senior Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama.
Bammer.
He's playing hurt too. He was sick.
Aren't
Still
we all?
agreed to come
It's
on.
like you for most of these shows so
I
far.
know. Like I've been
You're a
sick.
trooper, though.
As are you, sir.
Super trooper.
As are you. And our thanks to Del Reid, the founder of 26 Shirts and one of the co-founders of the Bills Mafia, for joining us, giving us the fan perspective. A little something different. Hope everyone enjoyed this episode. Maddie, it was a lengthy one. So our thanks to the listeners for sticking it out, because
You know what?
we had a lot to talk about there.
And you know what? Thanks to our senior producer, Mitch Beluco. I had to think for a second.
Mitchell B, down in
Mitchie B.
remote producing from down in Tampa.
He's a good kid.
Make sure you check us out on iTunes, Google Play. Download, subscribe, leave us a review if you're an iTunes user. I don't know why you Google Play people can't leave reviews, but you can't, so get on board with the iTunes people, I guess. I don't know what to tell
I'll
you.
open a chat room.
You should do something. You should do something like that. Check us out on Twitter at TBD_show, on Instagram, To Be Determined Show. Maddie's still working on Snapchat, so email the show. Tell him to get on Snapchat. TBDmailman@gmail.com. Make sure you check out the post-game press conference every Wednesday. We tape it right after the show. We figure out what we did right, what we did wrong, a lot of what we did wrong.
It's a banger.
It's a fun one. It's a good little segment. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Check out archived episodes of To Be Determined there, the video versions, and the post-game press conference there. Check out Maddie on social media, @TrabsMatt. I'm at Sports by Bond. Later, boys.